Good day, everyone. And today we're going to talk about another topic in oral communication, which is about the intercultural communication. So before we proceed with that, I have here some activity for you. So right now we're going to say hello based from its different translation from other countries. So if your birth month is January, you say bonjour, ni hao for February, aloha for March, konnichiwa for April, good day for May, namaste for June, ciao for July, guten tag for August, buenos dias for September, jumbo for October, annyeonghaseyo for November, and shalom for December. Okay, so all of this are something related to what we're going to talk about later on. So this activity is something related to our topic, which is about the intercultural communication, just like what I mentioned earlier. First, let us identify the differences of language and culture. So when we are talking about the language, it is the set of shared symbols or signs that are a cooperative groups of people has agreed to use to create meaning. Okay? And each one of us communicates and everybody has a culture, whether or not it is well defined. And this implies that we are all obliged or obligated to communicate with people from the other cultures, the culture that is different from us. So that is the importance of knowing and understanding the intercultural communication. As we all know, communication entails more than just the exchange of information. It also entails the mutual construction or creation of a certain meaning. And here, we need also to identify what do we mean by the word culture. When we say culture, according to Cole 2019, it is a term that refers to a large and diverse set of mostly intangible aspects of social life. And according to sociologists, culture consists of those intangible aspects, and those are the values, beliefs, systems of language, okay, and practices that people share in common and that can be used to define them as what we call as collective. As we all know, just like what I mentioned earlier, when we are talking about communication or language, it is the mutual creation of meaning, and the culture itself, it's the coordination of meaning, and it follows with what we call as the intercultural communication. When we are talking about the intercultural communication, it is the study and practice of communication across cultural context. And this means that intercultural communication is the mechanism whereby people of different groups perceive and try to make sense of one another. While there is no assurance that individuals would accept the differences they encounter throughout this process, it's still a requirement of good communication that people try to comprehend on one other's intentions. And as we all know, culture also influences how individuals speaks, writes, and also think. And now, let us identify how is language related to culture. So let us answer with this one from a cultural perspective. According to Way 2005, language is both used as a means of communication as well as a carrier of culture. For example, you are learning a Korean language or Hangul. You are not only dealing with their systems of language, their symbols of the alphabet, you are not only dealing with those things, but you are also dealing with their cultures, traditions, and many more. And according to Way 2005, language without culture is unthinkable. So is human culture without language. And language reflects the culture that you have because language and culture are intertwined. It reflects the beliefs, traditions, values, lifestyle, habits, and customs of an individual, and it shapes anyone the way they think, the way they talk. Okay. And we also identified that language does not limit anyone's ability to perceive the world, right? Without language, there is no way to bind people and maintain and pass the customs and traditions of one cultural group from the past generation to the future generation. So that is why let us now identify the different aspects of intercultural communication. So it is important for us to comprehend the concept of the identity or the aspects to intercultural communication in order for us to comprehend how it influences the what we call the intercultural communication. And as we all know, each person and every person has many identities that they display depending on a certain situation. So right now, we're going to identify what are those identity. Let us talk about the first one, which is what we call as the gender identity. So gender identity, it refers to how and to what extent one identifies with the social construction of masculinity and femininity. It's because here in our society, as we all know, we've seen men and women differently in our society. Okay? And gender is created idea based on communication. And gender is the cultural distinction between the two, which is for the men and women. Gender also refers to the set of cultural norms that men and women are expected to look, okay? The way they act, the way they communicate, and the way they live as well. This refers to how men and women are assigned to various social responsibilities in one culture. And of course, women have been seen to discuss more frequently about personal, domestic topics such as family, relationship, health, food, clothing, whereas for men, they talk more on about the sports, business, current affairs, and many more other aspects. As a result, of course, in terms of communication goals, women communicate to develop and nurture relationships, whereas males communicate to achieve a common goal or to complete a task. And as a result, men's language is more direct, okay? And whereas women's language is more compassionate and emotional. Now, for the social class identity. Okay? So when we are talking about the social class identity, it refers to an informal ranking of people in a certain culture based on their income, occupation, education, and people from different social class also has different lifestyles. Okay, the clothes that they wear or the foods that they eat, the okay, how they speak and the use of their language is also a different one. And a person's class identity can be inherited and earned as well. And of course, for the spiritual or religious identity or religion identity, it is defined by one's spiritual beliefs. Okay? And this has an impact on how people act, what they believe in, and religion is also a source of some intercultural tensions as well, such as when someone forces their religious beliefs on someone who does not share them. And this religious identification can also influence one's gender identity and be linked to one's racial or national identity. So whatever religion we are in and what are the things we believe in, okay, we must still respect each other. And each religion, they've also have, okay, each religion, they also has different ways of living. They've also has different things on what they believe on. Okay. So that is the third identity. And for the fourth, this is what we call the age identity. So the age identity, it's a combination of how you feel about your age as well as how others understand what you mean by this. So in Filipino, okay, or us here in our country in Philippines, we use po and opo whenever we are talking to older people than us. Okay? And we also refer to kuya, ate, lolo, and lola in addressing someone who's older than us, whether it's our relatives or not. In Korea, they've also addressed people, okay, or their elders differently by utilizing the honorifics. And of course, for the last identity, this is the cultural identity. It's a self-identification, a sense of belonging to a group that reaffirms itself. And it is made up of values, meanings, customs, beliefs that are employed to interact with the world. It represents our shared historical experiences and cultural codes, which provide us with a constant and changing frame of reference and meaning. And as we all know, each culture has its own set of historical experiences, okay, historical events, political situations, the way they dress, the way they celebrate things, speech, and many more other aspects. So aside from identifying those different aspects to intercultural communication, we must also identify the importance of understanding the intercultural communication. Okay, so we have the second one, or the second topic, which is about the importance. First, understanding your own identity. So just like what we mentioned here, the first purpose to learn intercultural communication is to gain sensitivity to different cultural heritages and backgrounds in order to better understand your own identity. It could be racial, cultural, gender, social class factors that may affect your personal identity, who you are and who you want to be, and it could also influence your decisions, your values, your beliefs, your lifestyle, and many more other aspects. Okay. Aside from that, it could also help us to enhance our personal and social interactions. And according to this, the more open-minded you are, the more tolerant and accommodating you will be. As we all know, in our daily lives, we are having personal interactions with people who are different from ours, whether in terms of physical ability, gender, ethnicity, class, religion, physical, race, nationality, and many more other aspects. And through this, if we've learned how to be able to communicate with those people who are different from the way we perceive the world, the way we believe in, okay, we could also break some misconceptions. And of course, it could help some, okay, to solve the misunderstanding. And the study of the intercultural communication will not open doors that have been locked for decades, but of course, by respecting, by being aware of the intercultural communication, okay, we could resolve miscommunication or misunderstanding or mistrust as well. And it could also help us to enhance our quality of civilization, and it could also enrich the quality of our civilization. So recognizing and accepting ethnic and cultural diversity are vital first steps toward appreciating the ways in which diversity improves and enriches our civilization's quality. So all of this importance of studying the intercultural communication are all essential, because just like what I mentioned earlier, whenever we are learning a new language, we are not only dealing with their systems or symbols of language, but we are also dealing with their own beliefs, traditions, and culture that they have. And being aware of this, we could be able to communicate appropriately and effectively to other people who have different cultures than us. And of course, we need also to identify barriers to intercultural communication. And we have four. The first one is the ethnocentrism. In the ethnocentrism, it is the belief that one's own cultural groups, either their behavior, norms, ways of thinking, and ways of being, are superior to other cultural groups. So here, this mindset or this thinking is you're going to identify that your culture is superior to the other existing culture. However, it's not. Okay. And ethnocentrism should not be confused you with what we call the patriotism, which is the devotion to one's country. And ethnocentrism carries devotion to the extreme point where you cannot believe to another culture's behavior, norms, ways of living, and ways of being of what they are as good or as worthy as yours. And we should avoid those kinds of mindset. It's because there is no culture that is superior to another one, and there is no culture that is inferior to other one. It's because each culture has its own uniqueness, and some of it has also some similarities to the other cultures. So if the ethnocentrism will still continue, it becomes a barrier to intercultural communication where it prevents a certain individual to see another perspective or another point of view. And the second barrier is what we call the stereotyping or the stereotypes. And these are the oversimplified or distorted views of another race, another ethnic group, or even another culture. And just like, for example, what I've mentioned earlier, our society assign responsibilities to a certain group of people, for example, for men and women. However, we should get rid of these barriers. It's because not all of women, okay, are soft-spoken, and not all of us are emotional. However, not all of the men are always strong, okay, as we want them, okay, to be look like that, okay. Stereotyping is a means of categorizing and generalizing from the massive amount of data that we receive on a regular basis. However, the challenge in stereotyping is that once they've created, it is already difficult to change, whether that stereotyping or whether that distorted views is favorable or not. And this can also be found in our subconscious knowledge. That is why it is more difficult as well to get rid of this. It's because we are less aware of this one. And this simply depends our embedding as well. And to get rid of the stereotyping, we need first to detect them, then gather particular knowledge to fight them. And also the prejudice as another barrier to communication or to intercultural communication. When we say prejudice, this is your negative attitude toward a cultural group based on little or no experience at all. And of course, the discrimination, okay, is also another barrier, which is the overt actions one takes to exclude, avoid, or distance oneself from other groups. So these barriers of intercultural communication, we must get rid of this, such as ethnocentrism, okay, such as stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. When you say discrimination, you are trying to exclude or avoid a certain group of people. It's because you cannot believe on what they believe in. However, it's not a good thing. A term that we should always remember whenever we are communicating is the word respect. Okay? If respect another people, they respect us as well. So today we've also had our discussion for the differences of language and culture and how is language related to culture. When we've answered it from a cultural perspective, we've also identified what is intercultural communication, the aspects or the identity to intercultural communication, the importance of studying it, and of course, okay, the different barriers to intercultural communication.